Now, this is also mentioned in my reflection, when I imported my PowerPoint that I made today into Nearpod, the formatting of the pictures did not stay the same, so it's blocking some of the words. So that is something that I was disappointed in immediately. But anyway, so in this lesson, students are going to be learning about lab safety. So this would be done in the beginning of the year and it's meant for 6th graders. So here is the opening slide. Now I also said by the end of the lesson, we'll have a class set of safety rules for our lab. And it's a brief presentation. So here's here I can do a live session. And I'll actually have my phone logged on so that you can see what the responses would look like. MIHFC, join. Okay, close. So now, obviously, I would have to sign in, submit. Okay, so now I'm on. Okay. So now I would start out the lesson by, introducing the topic of lab safety. And I would ask them immediately, in society, why do we have laws? So an example could be to protect ourselves and others. So let me just type that in, to protect ourselves and others from harm. And basically what I want them, the purpose of this is to get them to connect it to lab safety. So why do we have rules in the lab? And it's the same thing, to protect ourselves and others from harm or danger. So based on these results that come up on the screen, I would lead a discussion about why we have laws in society based on their responses. So, and all the students would be able to see the results up there as well, so that they have access to those. Now, on to the next slide. From there, I would discuss how in a science lab, or just like in any other class, we have classroom laws or classroom rules, is what they're called commonly. And more specifically in the science lab, why we have classroom rules. Now, we discussed, they're to protect ourselves, to protect our classmates, to protect the school, like you don't want the school burning down, things like that. So we'd have a brief discussion about that as well, and tie it into why society has laws. Now, the next question I would ask is, I would want them to come up with words that come to mind when they hear lab safety. So for me, when I hear lab safety, I think of goggles, I think of chemicals and open flames, and also things such as, running is not allowed. So running, neatness is definitely a big thing. You want to keep your work space neat. Let's see, procedures. So I'd give the students a minute to think about that and to type in their answers. So I just typed in mine, and it should come up briefly. Now, this is another downfall I found with Nearpod, unless I just couldn't figure out how to do it properly. I wanted to take everyone's words, and I wanted to be able to import them into a slide, so it would be like our brainstorming slide. But instead, since I couldn't figure out how to do that, I just did an example. So I would take the words that my students had shared with me, and since I couldn't import them on a slide, I'd write them on the board. So for example, safety, eye protection, open flames, neatness, oops, accident, don't eat or drink substances. Again, there's a formatting problem. So the students would have access to all these words. We'd go over them briefly. And then what I'd have them do is I'd have them do a cluster splash. So I'd separate them into groups of 3 or 4, depending on how big the class is, how many students are there that day. And I would have them, use as many of the lab safety words as they can. Obviously, we would come up with a ton. Maybe I would limit it to, maybe I'd only write a few words because obviously there's going to be overlap. But use as many of the lab safety words to come up with a paragraph about lab safety, what they think. And I want them to underline their words that they use and be prepared to share their paragraph with the class. And again, this wouldn't be done on the computer. They would do this, they would write these paragraphs and then present them to the class and me and then hand them in, and I can just use that kind of as a formative assessment and just to see where the students are. And it's fun to see their work as well. So then after that, I would have the students share, or the group share their paragraphs, and from there I would look for, while they're doing this, I would ask them to look for common themes. So things that came up in everybody's, or a majority of the group's paragraphs. So for example, here, this is what I would expect to hear. I mean, these are the things you hear most often. So think ahead about what you were doing. Always wear eye protection. That's like a given one. That's the one everyone thinks of first. Well, at least I do. And when I was student teaching, that's the one students always thought about. Always listen and read the instructions before doing anything. That's probably the most important thing. Encourage your classmates and work together. You don't want one person doing all the work. Safety always comes first, obviously. Don't run or fool around. Tell a teacher of an accident. Things like that. So based on those common themes, I would have those posted on the board. I would have the students come up with a set of classroom rules, or classroom lab safety rules, and we would take those and we'd write it on chart paper or something. Maybe someone could create something online using some sort of app to create this nice, beautiful poster to post in the lab. And so for example, based on the common themes that I put here, I made an example. So our science lab safety rules. Before doing anything in the lab, listen to the teacher's directions, read the instructions completely, things like that. And that would obviously be posted in the classroom lab for the students to refer back to. And I mean, it would be a good thing to review before, just a quick review before each lesson, just to emphasize, safety is very important. And that, I believe there's one more slide. Okay, now this is where I would assess them. I would basically use it as a I wouldn't use it as a summative assessment, but I would use it to help drive my instruction, so maybe help plan for the next lesson. Oh, I don't know why I did that. Okay, so basically I'd ask them, why is lab safety important? What are some important things to remember or do when you are in the lab? So I would be expecting a paragraph for that. Again, I didn't add that in here, but I would orally say that to them. I want a paragraph, obviously complete sentences, proper grammar. I would probably be more specific. Instead of saying what are some important things, I could say, tell me at least 3 different things that you should remember to do when you are in the lab. And that, I haven't figured out how to do this, but I would hide the results from the students, so as they answered the question, it wouldn't go up here. And I would just say that, and when they were at lunch or whatever, if I had time, I'd look over them and use that to drive my instruction. If I saw that a lot of people had trouble telling me why lab safety is important, obviously I'd really want to go over that again, because safety is the most important thing in a lab. And that is my Nearpod.